I want to thank everybody for coming and attending. I think this is our fourth week doing this, so we're hoping to continue them. We've gotten some good feedback that people find them valuable. We've gotten some questions submitted throughout the week. So in reality, I think what we're trying to just see what people like, and so any questions that people have, we just encourage you to send them ahead of time. So some of the questions we'll be answering today, we've received ahead of time. And then, as always, we record it and we have it posted, so anybody can watch them anytime. So feedback is great, so anything anybody has for us, suggestions, whatever, we're very open to it. Again, the goal is just to provide value here and help people with answering questions that we know the answers to. So I guess why don't we get started? Greg, what's the first question?
First question is, what is cyber insurance and do I need it? And if so, why?
Okay, so cyber insurance is something that we really suggest to everybody. It's getting to the point where it's just as important as liability and business insurance. We would always hope that you wouldn't use it or need to use it, just like with any insurance. But the reality is cyber insurance is there, you can't really call it a security layer, but it's really something that it's that last resort. If all else fails, I mean, hackers are good and they can get by pretty much any defense if they're trying. The cyber insurance is there to cover you in the event of a major infection. Like, let's take example of you got infected by ransomware. Well, you usually have to pay somebody to recover everything. There's any notifications that you'd have to do to your clients or anything that happened. That's what the insurance is there for. It's to pay for all those expenses that the infection and cybersecurity incident caused. So it's very important these days, and especially when it comes to ransomware, the amount of claims that are being processed by insurance companies now are so much more. I think in the beginning when they started offering it, they didn't even know how to price it or what they were in for. The insurance companies are learning over the last few years what they need to do, and obviously that's also affecting the premiums going up a little bit too. So, but it's worth it. I mean, it's just something that you hope you never have to use, but it could actually keep you from going out of business depending on what happened. So we highly recommend it. Next question.
Okay, it looks like one is being submitted right now. How can I protect my company from being hacked?
So it's actually not an easy question to answer, but I would say really it comes down to security layers. So if you're trying to protect your business from a hacker, there's so many different ways a hacker can come in that you really need to protect yourself through different methods. So, and we kind of refer to them as layers. So some examples of some of those layers, are really like a firewall. Like, you should always have a firewall, even though that's not by far the only thing you need these days. It's something that you have to have. So the antivirus software, like the traditional antivirus software, we've talked about that in past weeks, what some of the differences are there. But you need antivirus software. There's the traditional antivirus, which is signature based, and then there's next generation antivirus, which is something that's becoming more and more necessary. You need email security filtering. That's another way. There's website filtering. There's a thing called DNS filtering. It kind of filters the websites you're allowed to see. And there's more, but in general, the best way you can protect yourself is different layers. So don't just buy one. That's not good enough these days. You really just need to look at it from all aspects, and it's getting to the point where it's really hard without an IT professional's help to really keep yourself safe, because things change so quickly. So That's really my answer to that is just security layers. That's probably the best way to sum it up.
Hey, what is the difference between cloud servers versus physical servers?
That's a good question. I think a lot of people think cloud servers are this mystery. There really isn't that big of a difference between a physical server you have in your office and a server on the cloud. I mean, you could actually host a server you have in your house and make it a cloud server. A cloud server just means it's a server that's connected to the internet and people are connecting to it through the internet. So typically what you see with any cloud servers is they're in data centers. So in those data centers are potentially thousands of physical servers all running in racks, and that's when you see pictures of all the blinking lights and stuff. That's what the servers are. But without getting too technical here, generally another major difference between servers and the cloud is the software that runs on them. So there's a thing called virtualization, which pretty much everything in the cloud uses, as well as you can use it locally in your office too. But that's what allows you to get the most efficient use out of all the hardware resources that are in a data center. So that probably going a little more technical than something like this type of Q&A, but they really aren't that much different. A physical server that you have in your office could actually be a cloud server. That's the cloud server. It just means it's connected to the internet and you're accessing it through the internet.
This next question is, I just purchased my first company and the former owners were not focused on technology. I want to change that mindset. What advice can you provide for a new business owner on how to begin implementing technology into the workplace?
That's a really good question. I guess I would start with congratulations for purchasing your first company. The reality is, I think that's a great mindset to have. In reality, like a lot of business owners, they just think of technology that they don't understand it. It seems complex. They don't know how they can get the most out of it. So it just becomes a necessary expense. And it can be so much more. And so having a focus on realizing technology can really be an asset really comes down to, I think the best answer to that question is an IT strategy. And a lot of times you're going to need help with someone who understands technology and business to help you come up with an IT strategy. That's really kind of how our offering morphed into having all the roles it has, where we have someone dedicated to each of our clients that is an employee that works for us, that knows business and knows technology and can tie the two together. And so that's a very important role. So I would really suggest that's the best way to get involved. Is you have to have a plan, and you have to understand what you're trying to accomplish in your business. What are your business goals? What are your plans for the year? And then having someone, if you don't understand technology a lot yourself, having someone be able to understand that as well and say, well, hey, did you know you could do this with a server, or you could do this with a cloud service, or there's so many different options that are available to businesses these days, and you just have to know what the right one to pick is. And ultimately the goal is that technology is an investment, and you see it as an investment, and it's worth every penny because it's making you money. And so that's one of the goals we try to make with our offering, is that you stop looking at technology as an expense and start seeing it as it can be a real asset.
And congratulations on the purchase of that company. Next question is, do you prefer Mac or Windows machines for an office environment, and why?
So I think the answer to that is Macs and Windows they're both good. I don't really have anything bad to say about either one. It's really about fitting the needs to the environment and to that you're using them appropriately. So let's start with Windows machines. Windows machines, generally, if you have a server in your office or something, as that central thing that everybody talks to, that central computer, Mac really doesn't have server operating systems. They have things that sort of emulate it, but it's not really a true server. So most offices are going to have a Windows server or something like that. And the reality is a Windows computer, like a PC running Windows, will communicate much better and is much more compatible feature-wise to a Windows server. Mac PCs are able to actually communicate with Windows servers, but there is some limitations there. So I think the best answer is really you fit it to the need. If you are doing things with video or graphics, it's pretty typical that you'll see a Mac in a business to do that stuff. Macs are great for personal use. They are simple and easy to figure out. Apple has really designed their machines and most of their products towards consumers. So when you have an iPhone and an iPad and a Mac computer, they all talk to each other much better than you get when you have a Windows computer and then an iPad and an iPhone. So it kind of comes down to the application. There really isn't one that's better than the other, but you just got to look at what you're trying to accomplish. And in a lot of cases, for most businesses, Windows computers tend to be the dominant machine with just a few Macs. That's typically what we see. So hopefully that answers the question.
This next question seems to be a business question, which we had mentioned we had some coming in last week. What percentage of budgeted funds would you recommend to be set aside on an annual basis for organizations both large and small?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, please submit business questions. Thank you for doing that, because that's really I love talking about business. So in reality, there isn't a percentage that you come up with. Every business, every industry is a little bit different. There's some industries that it would be a much higher percentage because they rely on technology so much. There's other businesses that it doesn't need to be that high. So it really comes down to the strategy, what you're trying to accomplish, but it's a decent amount. Like you don't want the attitude of how little can I spend on IT because I don't get the value. That means you're just not doing the right things with IT. There's so many things you can accomplish that would help your business tremendously, and you invest appropriately. So I think that's a key part of what we try to do in the offering we have around the CIOs, working with our clients, and we're always involved around budget time. Like, what are the expenses going to need to be for next year? So it's really important to just think about those things and just there's just no percentage. It's just it's what fits for your business, and it's what makes the most sense. You want to be as cost effective as possible, but you don't want to spend too little money and get a bad result. So,
all right, the next question is, what is SharePoint and why do I need it, and how can it be used?
So SharePoint, and I actually covered this, I think, last week. SharePoint is one of the modules that you get when you subscribe to Office 365. So SharePoint is an incredibly powerful component of Microsoft Office 365. And so on the basic end of it, we use it a lot for our clients when they just want to host files in the cloud that they can get to from any device. And it's called a document library. It's part of SharePoint. And it's just a place you can put files that everybody can get to. You can control who has access to what. And it's an easy way to share files. That's at the very beginning of it. SharePoint is incredibly powerful. You can hire SharePoint developers to actually write full-fledged applications for your business that use SharePoint as the back end to store everything. And so SharePoint, in its name, its purpose is to share information. So you can have central calendars where you post, say, vacation calendars, whatever. You can have, kind of the term that people used to use very heavily years ago, and they still exist, is intranet. SharePoint originally was referred to as your company's intranet. That means it's an internal internet, basically. So it's a place to store information for your company. You can put in things that post information so that you can communicate better. An amazing software. It's just you really kind of need somebody to help you figure it out and use it appropriately, because it is so massive and its capabilities are so massive that you can use it on a simple end or you can use it for everything it's designed to do. And it's included with Office 365, so it's a very good value as well.
All right. The next question is encryption important, and what exactly is it?
So encryption is really, its purpose is to take, let's say, files or email or any kind of data that needs to be transmitted across the internet. That's the biggest reason it's used, is you encrypt that information so that it can only be read on the system it initiated from and on the system that's receiving it. Anything in between on the internet, the data is worthless. They can't read it without the decryption code. And so that in general is encryption is something that's applied to a file or an email or any kind of data. And if you don't have the decryption code, you can't read the data. So that's something that's just it's used in a lot of ways. There's also hard drive encryption. So if someone steals your computer and they get to your hard drive, they can't read any of the files on it because they don't have the decryption code. So in general, that's the point of encryption. It's you do something to a file or an email or anything, and without the decryption code, it's unreadable.
All right. This is another business question. Do you have any good business or leadership resources that you can recommend, whether they be books, podcasts, videos, or anything of the sort?
So, actually, I'm a very avid book reader. So, I think some of my favorite books are on leadership topics. I actually don't read that much on technology anymore because I'm not the guy that services everything. And these days, most people most engineers get their information from Google and different sources. They don't read books. But honestly, just to kind of say one book that's probably my favorite book so there's a book called The Servant. I'm a huge fan of servant leadership. That's pretty much the only leadership I believe in. And so there's a book called The Servant, and it's just, to me, if I could write my own book and put the words in it, that's what it would say. So it's one of my favorite books, so I would highly recommend that.
If I may add one, I'm a big fan of How to Win Friends and Influence People by Carnegie. That was one of the first ones.
I've read that too. That's
I've read it multiple times, so it's definitely a classic.
Yeah, I could go on. I if I looked at my Audible list, I'm a huge Audible listener. I could recommend all kinds of things. So if anybody wants to reach out to me offline, I'd be happy to chat about books.
Awesome. Right. Next question that just came in is, how often should computers be replaced?
Generally, our recommendation is every 5 years. But that really depends on what you're using them for. I mean, if you're using them as like a real power user, you may upgrade them every 3 years because you just need the newest, fastest technology for what you're doing. But I would say, on average, I mean, most people can get away with waiting 5 years as long as the machine doesn't get too slow. Once you hit 5 years, a lot of times, I mean, there's people that use computers for 6, 7, 8 years and they're fine. But generally, the lifetime where you start getting higher rate of hardware failures is around 5 years. So that's pretty much in all of our recommendations have always been 5 years for the PCs and 5 years for the server. And at that point, we're just seeing what's going on with it and saying, do we want to push it another year? What's the financial situation? And we just make the appropriate decision.
So we have another question that came in, but I wanted to ask a question that maybe our viewers might have. So on replacing computers, what do you do with your old computer? Do you recycle it or just throw it out, or what should be done?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually, for all of our clients, we actually will offer to recycle. I think it's the responsible thing to do. Computers and all that. Especially the circuit boards and the chips. They're not good sitting in a landfill, and there's companies that deal with recycling that and responsibly do away with the electronics. So we are a big proponent of recycling. When we do upgrades and stuff, if our clients want us to recycle the stuff for them, we collect it, and we actually work with a nonprofit that will will give all the recycled computers, all the old computers too, and they will actually not just recycle them and put them in a landfill. They actually will try to build them back up again and combine parts and everything from all the different stuff that they got, and then they will donate them to third world countries and places that can still use them. And it's all a nonprofit, so they don't charge for it. So they've been great to work with, because then sometimes if you're dealing with compliancy or things in medical, we have to either shred or destroy the hard drives, but the rest of the computer's fine and there's no information on it that would need to be destroyed. So, but it is better if we can responsibly just wipe the hard drive securely as well. So we always will take the hard drives and wipe them. We don't ever give them away with actual data on them, but from a compliance standpoint, sometimes it has to be actually destroyed. You can't just wipe it. But that was a great
That's
question.
awesome to know. That's awesome to know that organization, especially not for profit, can do something like that. Because I think so many people, they view a computer or a business as a big expense, and just to throw it away, kind of defeats the purpose. But well, thank you.
Yeah.
Next question that came in prior to that was, do you recommend having separate wireless networks in a business like a guest network? Why or why not?
So, yes, I would definitely say for a business, the reasons why you would want to do that is typically you will have like a private network that your employees and everybody in the company connects to. But if you have people that come to your office and need internet access, you don't want to give them access to your internal network. I mean, maybe if you know them really well and trust them, but they're just looking for internet access. They don't need to get to all your internal things. So that's where we typically will set up a guest network, so that's basically when you connect to a wireless network, you're connecting to a name. So in our case, you go to our office, and Easy Micro is our private network, but we have one that says Easy Micro Guest. And so we give guests the password to that one, and then they can only get to the internet. They can't get to any of our internal servers or PCs or anything like that. So it's not that hard to set up at all, and I would highly recommend, if you have guests that use your network connection, don't just give them your private code, because you don't, even if you know them and you're just like, you're not worried about them getting into anything. What if their machine was infected by something, or they have a virus and you don't know it? This just prevents all of that.
Here's another business question that is related to IT. It states, I'm a business owner that has to terminate an employee. This employee has email and network access and was the primary contact for a lot of our contracts, since their communication was conducted primarily through email. How can I continue to get the email but restrict their access? Is that possible?
Yes, that's totally possible. Unfortunately, those aren't fun things to have to deal with as a business owner, but um, within any email system, almost every email system out there supports forwarding. So you would just go into that mailbox, and it's different for every mail system, but you would just tell it to forward all messages for that mail. Anything that comes into that for that person would get forwarded out. But almost every mail system will also let you continue to receive it in that mailbox. So you basically would turn on forwarding, but don't tell it to only forward, tell it to deliver it to that mailbox. That way, basically a copy of everything that comes in gets forwarded to someplace else. And so that way, the person that's in that position now, if you're not going to be telling them that anything's going on, they're not going to know there's anything's different. And then if you do end up letting them go, then you would just put that email address on somebody else's mailbox, or there's lots of different options. But yes, you can completely do that, and pretty much any mail system I think should support that.
Other than any live feed questions, this is the last question that was submitted throughout the week. And this asks, how do I communicate and keep my team members on the same page when they are working remotely?
So, and especially with what everybody's going through now, that's something that is really important. I think it comes down to a lot of different things. So I would kind of address that a couple ways. So keeping everybody communicating, using things like Zoom or Teams. Zoom is really primarily used for chatting and video conferencing. Teams also does that, but Teams has a part to it that is very similar to another package called Slack. It's basically you set up a channel or a topic or something that you're going to talk about, and then everybody kind of posts things to that. So it's a way of keeping everything related to a particular topic in one place. When you email that to everybody and you're emailing to large groups of people and things, emails can get lost, and people have been doing that for years, and you get used to searching for things. But if you can keep everything in one place, that's really helpful. Some other things that I've seen is programs like Microsoft in Office 365. They have a thing called Planner. There's also a very similar free option, free/paid option called Trello. They're pretty much the same thing, and it's a way of collaborating between people. So you have lists, and then you have things, cards that you put on a list, and you can store all kinds of information like files and notes and checklists and things in each card, and you can really communicate well and keep things organized by doing that. People will use Trello or Planner for just project management and looking at where things are in a project. It can be used for I use it personally for my to-do list and keeping track of long-term and short-term things and the stuff I need to get done today. Those are all different lists, and so there's lots of ways that you can communicate with, and lots of free options to make that really work. On top of just having good processes and procedures and documentation and people understanding how to do their job, and communication is the key. So I feel like we've always been able to work remotely, but having everybody remote at the same time, that brought up a few challenges, and we've kind of gotten past those things, and I think we function pretty well. But using the tools that are available, we love to try to help our clients with that. And again, you're solving a business problem using technology, and so there's just so many different things out there. But it sort of depends on your company and what you are trying to accomplish.
I don't see any new questions that came in from the live feed. So Dave, are we going to continue answering live questions in the future, or what's the future of this question and answer forum?
I think so far, we've gotten some good feedback. We're going to continue to always post these things. So I think we're, for the near future, we're going to keep doing these live at the same time every week. And we're also talking about, providing content other ways, and doing kind of like, I guess, video podcasts and interviews with people, and just kind of expanding the things that we're offering, everything with the ultimate goal of just helping people and providing knowledge and education. And so we're, any suggestions that anybody has, we're, again, totally open to feedback. But for now, we're going to just keep doing them live, and then the live gets posted and people can watch it if they don't have time to watch it live. So.
Excellent. So nothing new came in. If we want to stay open for a few more minutes, but other than that, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining. We really hope that we're providing value here, and if you find value, please pass it on to other people. That's what we're trying to accomplish here, and so we really appreciate the feedback that we've gotten too. Thank you for everybody who's communicated with us. So yeah, I guess we have nothing else. So thank you everybody. We'll see you next week.